is Kiva Live Podcast, landing on your computer, radio, or listening device. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, William Lee, and this is Kiva Live. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's great to be here today. It's a beautiful Saturday, and a little overcast, of course, but still a very beautiful day indeed. Welcome to the show. We're so glad to have everybody here today. Oops, did I hear that doing? I'm going to be producing the show today, and there might be some technical errors, so please stand by as we try to take a look in depth at the world of podcasting and how it's affected social media and how social media affects us. So it's really great to be here. And, you know, I have just started podcasting here not long ago. My partner in the podcast field is a very good friend of mine. You've heard of me speak of her many times, and that is Candace Thompson, founder of the Wild Child Group. She co-hosts with me on the show, The Disruptors, and how we can disrupt your day. It's a interesting podcast about interesting people in the community, business, and different effects that business has on our community. And we get to talk to a lot of great entrepreneurs that have worked so hard to make our daily lives much better. So today, I want to get off the track a little bit, and I want to talk about podcasting, first of all, because we've had some emails that came in, and they asked it, they said, well, what is podcasting all about? We don't understand this podcasting thing. You're a podcaster? What's that? It's really very interesting to me at times to analyze how things kind of have moved along through history. You know, since Morse code was discovered and Marconi finally got radio transmissions across the continent, things have really evolved with technology. I can remember being a baby boomer. I can remember very well the days of what we called the really interesting communication vehicle, which was the party line. Everybody had a phone and a ring of their own. And when somebody initiated a call, if it was your ring, like 2 short blasts and 1 long blast, well, then you knew to pick up the phone and say hello and have a wonderful chat. It was always kind of interesting to me, though, that was kind of the first social media. And I'll tell you the reason why I always say this is because simply while you were chatting back and forth, there was always that possibility that somewhere, someone on that line could simply pick up the phone and find out exactly what's going on in your home. The trauma, or maybe the wonderful, joyous events that happen in family. The party line, which was really the instrument of communication that we thought at that time brought the world so much closer together, was only the start of what we know what's going on today. So as time evolves, the radio, AM, FM is developed. The world gets a little shorter, a little smaller. Time gets a little bit faster. People can learn about what's going on in foreign countries from journalists that work the radio airwaves. And it was a very important time in our history. From that time came an evolving of the arts in what I call the studio masterpieces. These would be the original radio shows that came on. There were so many of them. And it was in that time period, back in the 30s and early 40s, families would gather around the radio to listen to broadcasts from far or a simple radio show, or even something like the Theater of the Mind. How about the Green Hornet? There's some of the great radio shows that were on. The Long Ranger, which took us on a mental imagery in our mind as we heard the words coming across the airwaves of the exciting times in radio production. Well, we know, of course, as radio is and will always probably be 49% of the communication point of viewing of the world, we also have to realize that the television came along in about 1941 thereabouts, and by 1949, throughout that era, a whole new television really was developed. And I don't remember as well because, that was just a few years ago, of course. But I can always go back in history and look on Google about the early shows that were on. Uncle Milton Berle, who pioneered the family television, a show with humor and a variety of guests, moved all the way through to Howdy Doody, who, believe it or not, was one of the first actual shows, a television show basically designed for kids for around the world, to talk about branding products such as Wonder Bread, Twinkies, and etc. And a live broadcast right there. No script, no nothing, just doing an impromptu 30 or 60 seconds. Buffalo Bob grabbed the world and was probably one of the first real live advertisements ever done on stage or in the studio live. As time goes on, however, television evolves more and more. People get more involved with shows. Soap operas become alive and being a creative opportunity for you to clear your mind for a few moments and then jump into somebody else's life or somebody else's drama. Relaxing, fun, taking your mind away from the everyday problems that we faced. Throughout that time also, television became a very important part in bringing out news and showing you the problems, the wars, the economy, all sorts of areas that journalism was so important in. Actual journalism. The man on the street gathering the information, looking for the truth, digging hard into the stories to bring you back a complete picture of what was going on at the time. World War II, of course, was a tragedy. It was a horrifying moment, but journalism brought back the truths and the actual pictures of what was going on. Now, as time has evolved and changed, a lot of things have changed. Technology has sped things up. Now, instead of worrying about a message taking maybe a day to go around the world, or in the days of the old telegraph systems, many hours going around the short areas, now with social media, people can buy back the airwaves and actually transmit around the world in anywheres from 2 to 7 minutes. Or you can text information. We can now send video imagery across the land or across the sea faster than the speed of light. It's incredible, isn't it? Well, we all remember, of course, that the factor is that social media has now, since the big boom, really made a big change in the news and how we look at such things as news forecasts, how we can bring actual information from global events to your computer within a matter of seconds. And it's been such a big change. It's changed our lives. The computers with this technology has now evolved into a completely new world where we can sit, as I'm doing today, behind a microphone, and we can now talk on the airwaves. We can bring out our views. We can talk about our favorite subjects. Maybe it's a recipe or how to bake a cake, or maybe it's more complicated. Maybe it's really our views on political or questions on economical forces that work with us to build our economy or to change our lifestyles. It's all wrapped up into the point now whereas it's as close as your next door neighbor. Has privacy been lost? Has journalism been stumped? These are some of the questions that evolve. Has it come a time now when man can actually step out and make his opinion known from a very quiet, shy individual on the street to now a dark, mysterious, but voice that can be heard throughout the internet? I can remember just not too long ago, what we call a shock jock started on the radio with foul language and very descriptive ideas of sexual reproduction. Howard Stearns is his name. He moved off of the regular AM broadcasting and relieved himself of the duties of worrying about FCC and government regulations of our airwaves. He stepped into what we call the world of the internet, the world that is completely, really ungoverned and changing so fast. Howard Stearns, however, probably brought the first freedom to actual podcasters like myself and to other DJs by combining video and audio, in some cases through YouTube, to express their opinions, to say what's ever on their choice of words on their chest at the time. And they would tackle, I believe, subjects that really are interesting, political, or embarrassing. Howard Stearns has really, however, honed his show to the point now where by using the technology of YouTube, he can take and do his podcast or his internet radio show and bring it into the homes of everyone legally with actual non-consequences. In other words, the FCC really doesn't have anything to do with it now. It's kind of like the old days, you can probably remember these, when individuals had what was called a citizen band radio in their home, and little tiny voices from nowhere would appear when they'd say, "Breaker, breaker, rubber ducky, are you out there 10-4 good, buddy? How's the rubber staying down? Keep the sunny side up. We're moving on." And a whole cult from that generation appeared. FCC lost control of it, of course, as we find later on, and due to a weather and frequency band changes, the citizen band radio was moved, and finally everybody disbanded. Most of them just disappeared, and for a few years were not heard from. But then the computer arrived in our home, and Google it took over our lives in technology as far as being able to communicate and voice our opinions. Podcasting became very popular about 2000, and it started building momentum. Of course, at that time, it was only like 3% of the communication going on. Of course, in 2008, we had that horrible boom that we thought was going to work called .com, which was a Wall Street failure and crashed into what we call a burning ashes of bad investments. By 2011, however, podcasters were gathering together, and many of them had come out with different shows. Technology made it more available for equipment to be utilized. The cost came down so that you could afford good studio type equipment. And more platforms came on to the actual scene to allow us to podcast. Now, a podcast is a radio show, but a little bit different because it's actually a communication point that can be used as conversation on the internet. Just a simple conversation with a little music developed into quite an organization of podcasters, thousands of them throughout the United States, then throughout the world, who could actually produce a doggone good show covering topics, inspiring, educating, or just entertaining people throughout the area, throughout the world. Now it has enabled us with the next step of technology, with our car radios that are now able to do internet activities and all the wonderful audio devices we have. We can now enjoy more and more podcasts. Maybe we're interested in sports and there's a Seahawk, for instance, podcasting show. Or maybe we're more interested in home and gardening. Well, there's shows that cover that by people that are very excited and very knowledgeable about their individual talent. Growing beautiful flowers. How about cooking shows and radio shows?